Today's webcast is the database the culprit of your application issues? First off, a little bit about myself. My name is Jared Hensel. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at SolarWinds. I was an IT pro for 15 plus years, working for everything from large businesses, the Fortune 100 companies, basically all the way through MSPs and kind of everywhere in between. Currently at SolarWinds, I've had all the server products, system products before, and now I'm on the database side of the house. And today I'm joined by Mr. Thomas LaRock. Tom.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Yes, my name's Thomas LaRock, and my current title is Head Geek here at SolarWinds. 20 years experience in roles programmer, developer, and database administrator. Essentially, I'm the guy that had to clean up after Jared for all his years in IT. I really do enjoy working with data and probably too much to be healthy.
Wow, shots fired 2 minutes into a webcast. All right, so the topic of today's conversation is, when you're troubleshooting an issue, where does it lie? Are you coming from the application side? Are you coming from the database side? I know myself, I actually was a DPA customer about 6 months before I joined SolarWinds, because from a systems point of view, I troubleshot it until I was, blue in the face. I couldn't figure it out. Everything looked fine. Ultimately, I did not have the correct tool that I was able to get with DPA and leverage my conversations with the SQL administrator to dive into the problem and fix it. But ultimately, that problem is very common amongst organizations. So here, what we're going to do is show you how the combination of SAM and Database Performance Analyzer is a great 1-2 punch, where you're getting all your metrics from literally BIOS and hardware all the way into query performance and locking and blocking and everywhere in between. So again, the combination of these two products is going to dramatically expedite troubleshooting time, root cause analysis, because ultimately, we're both on the same IT team. A ticket's going to come in that XYZ application is slow, and we need to resolve that issue as fast as possible. So what we're going to do is go over the two products I just mentioned, SAM and Database Performance Analyzer. We're going to briefly give you a quick overview of what those products do, and then get into demos of each product. So it'll be moving pretty quick, but ultimately we want to spend more time in the demo showing you how these products work. I will say feel free to use the Q&A on the side. I'll be doing my best to look at those as we go through the presentation and demo, but feel free, if I don't ask it or don't answer your question, we have a Q&A at the end that your questions will be answered. But feel free to try to jump in, and I'll do my best, or Thomas will do his best to answer those live. Quickly about kind of SolarWinds, how we see hybrid IT operations management. So again, multiple statistics are saying, or stats, or analysts are saying, hey, 75% plus of databases are virtualized. Cloud is growing at 30% for databases. So your environment is no longer a single box, physical bare metal box in your data center. It is spread out all over the place, which then, when you have that distributed environment, you're running into multiple tiers of applications. You've got the actual operating system itself. You've actually got your database performance, and you've actually got your operating system, storage, networking. Again, how does data go from point A to point B? How does it go from the front end to the back end? So again, these are all ways that we're looking at things within SolarWinds, and you've got the whole compliance and security issue on top of that. So we pretty much have everything covered from a database, from a IT infrastructure point of view and application point of view, to make sure that you're monitoring your applications, your databases, your hardware the best way possible. Real quick, I'm going to throw up a quick poll question. You should see it on the, I believe, left-hand, right-hand side of your window. If you take a minute to answer that, that would be greatly appreciated. That way we can just get some more information of what your job title is, or really what you do and how you manage things, and so we can look at it further. Appreciate that. Thank you. With that said, a little bit about Server and Application Monitor, aka SAM. What it is it's part of the Orion platform, and it monitors multi-vendor. So we're vendor agnostic. We are in the AWS and Azure cloud marketplaces. We also have monitoring for AWS and Azure. So if you're going back to hybrid, if your app is running on-prem on Dell or HP, we got you covered. If your app is running in AWS and Azure, we've got you covered. We can pull in those specific metrics. If your app is running in Google, GCP, or Rackspace, we can still monitor it from the operating system and above, but we do have additional infrastructure metrics when it comes to AWS and Azure. SAM has over 1,200 supported application templates, so everything from your Windows, Microsoft Windows, SQL Server, to Linux Apache, to Semantic, to APC, UPSs, anything along those lines, plus the ability to customize that template. So if you don't have, you have a custom app, or you've got some app that we just don't have a template for, by all means, you can grab the service in the process and create your own templates. You can use APIs to grab templates, to create your own template, pull from an API. So really, we've got the ability the sky is the limit on how you can customize this product. And as I alluded to earlier, we have it all the way down to the hardware health layer. So again, for those that are still running physical boxes, or even if you're running a virtual environment, we can get you to your physical infrastructure and show you, hey, here's your BIOS, here's your disks and fans and things along those lines. Tom, you want to take a quick stab at the DPA overview?
Sure. So, like Jared mentioned, it's kind of funny how Jared and I are very similar in the sense that we were both customers before we joined SolarWinds, right? So Jared had mentioned it was about 6 months beforehand. It was a little bit longer for me, I think. But former customers who enjoyed the product so much, they went to work for the company, essentially. And the biggest thing for me, the struggle I had, was as a database administrator, everything runs on a database, but anything new that came across, say, the business side, and they said, oh, we love this thing, we're going to buy it. Hey, it runs on Oracle. Hey, it runs on whatever. It just didn't matter. I was always being tossed a new platform to support, or at least being asked to support something new, even though I would have no experience with that particular platform. So it was a bit frustrating for me trying to go through that, right? It's like you have to keep explaining over and over again, yes, I'm a database administrator, but I'm not familiar with every database platform out there. There's hundreds to choose from. There's a few common big vendors, right? But it can be daunting and difficult. So what I fell in love about DPA was the fact that it does cross-platform support. So not just that it can support each, but it does it in the same manner. So it wouldn't matter if I was looking at a Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, a DB2, the Artist formerly known as Sybase, these days MySQL, Postgres. They all have the concept of wait events. So you know what your queries are waiting for. They're either going to be running, runnable, suspended. When they're suspended, they log a wait event. So you can go in and you can analyze this and say, oh, I realized why my query was taking a minute. It was waiting for disk reads because of a bad index, something like that. And it was really this Rosetta Stone. So when something new came across to me and I said, hey, I've got to now support this Oracle instance, I at least had a fighting chance. I may not have 10 years experience tuning Oracle, PL SQL, but I at least had a chance. I understand the basics. I understand my bottlenecks are disk, network, CPU, memory, locking, and blocking. So it made me very effective, right? DPA got me up and running and being an effective administrator for these systems for at least tuning the queries. So these days, of course, we've expanded, and it doesn't matter where your data sits, Earth or cloud. DPA is also in the marketplace for Azure and for AWS. I think for AWS is the first tool we got into the marketplace. I may be wrong on that, but
I believe you're correct.
We're everywhere. You can deploy us however, whatever suits your needs, we can get it done. One of the first things we added after I joined SolarWinds was what we call the VM option. So at the time, virtualization was very popular. So what we did was we built the functionality to hook right into vCenter, to pull the metrics from vSphere and to correlate those with your database queries. We have standard out-of-the-box alerts and reporting. We have, it says Query Advisors, and we're going to talk about the Query Advisor, but I'm going to talk to you about the Table Tuning Advisor more specifically when we look at the demo. Something I'm really excited about came out 2 years ago maybe, is the machine learning anomaly detection. So you see at the bottom of the screenshot there on the right, what we've done is we have the ability to simply track the amount of weight that you have as an aggregate. So across all executions of all queries, all statements throughout the entire day, add up the amount of weight you have. And then we can use some common machine learning algorithms to simply build a prediction and say, okay, I think on Tuesday you're going to have, 3 hours of weight. And then, of course, we can see if we're right or not. And we can adjust and score from there. So, but what the anomaly detection does is it's the game changer for you, because you're always going to be administering and monitoring more and more with each passing day. Anomaly detection gets you a signal through all that noise, because you can have all these dashboards with reds and greens and yellows. But when the alert goes off, when the anomaly detection says, no, here's something, we predicted you have a certain amount of weight, but there's actually more here. This is the thing you should be focusing on today. And there's a lot of value in being able to focus on the one thing you need to fix today. That was always the thing I liked about DPA, was how it would let me focus. I have that dashboard and I could say, all right, what should I be doing? What are the top 3-5 queries I should fix? This is even better, because this really highlights where the issue is true, where my focus really needs to be.
Now, Tom, real quick, now that doesn't necessarily mean, though, it could be green and you still have an opportunity to tune things further. It's just saying, hey, this is running better or worse than expected, correct?
That's right. It's just better or worse than expected. You always have the opportunity to do more or less, I guess. But no, it's absolutely, it is just saying, hey, this was against my prediction. It turns out to be, something anomalous. And that's it. That in a nutshell, right? And we also have real-time monitoring down to the second. I'll probably, if I think of it, I'll show you that in the real-time view as well. And the last thing I'll mention is it says expert advice. So you've got many decades of experience built into this product. So when you click on like a little help file and you're getting some information back on what to do next, that isn't just somebody reading from a manual. That is myself and others that have spent many years as production database administrators, and we're telling you exactly what the weight means and what to do about it and where to go and find more information. So that, to me, I always liken it as the Rosetta Stone. So I could bounce between different platforms, but as long as I understand the word statistics and indexes and things like that, it really helps me be effective and efficient across a lot of different platforms.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. From a DPA, from all of our product perspective, I want to say DPA probably has the most, a little bubble pop up like, hey, this is what this means. This is what you should go do or think about doing, and give you that advice. It's really good for, I know myself, like, I stated earlier, I was a system admin and I bought DPA and did not know what I was looking at, but was able to figure it out and get enough information to the SQL administrator so we can make changes. And crazy enough, everything started working better, even though I didn't change a thing on my side. I was on the phone with the engineers, and I was like, this is above 24 hours of wait time. They're like, yeah, this is really poorly written. I'm like, oh, can you repeat that when I get this other guy on the phone? Mm-hmm. Which was great. It was like, hey, finally, this is not my problem. But I digress. Real quick, why the 1-2 punch between SAM and DPA? Again, as Tom and I have talked about, they really start at different layers. Sam's going to look at the system's health and the app and process. So again, if your foundation is not working correctly, you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball on tuning and optimizing DPA. I mean, if you're out of storage space, or you're on poor performing drives, or you've got a SQL server with 5 other applications on there, you're asking a DPA to work a miracle to try to tune that thing correctly, when they're just behind the 8 ball with everything else going on there. So you can see how SAM is going to give you that basic foundational aspect of what my server is doing. And then you can see that there's a couple bleed over things, AppStack and PerfStack and alerting and reporting, And that's where these products start linking together, and it makes that cohesive conversation from systems administrator to DBA, or just systems administrator that has to put out a database fire, or a database admin that has no clue what what's going on from the operating system point of view. But it links it together so that you can have connectivity into deeper database analysis. So again, quickly you can just kind of see the system side, and then as we get further down the list in the DPA, you'll see more database-specific metrics, obviously. With that said, I'm just going to push straight into the demo so we can start poking around and showing everybody what we're looking at here. So I'm going to start first, and I'm going to share my screen, confirm that everybody can see it.
I can see it.
Awesome. Okay, so right here, this is the summary screen for all of the SolarWinds products. So this particular, and this demo is publicly available, oriondemo.solarwinds.com. And this demo is loaded out. We've got the networking stuff, the flow, config, logs, servers, storage, everywhere in between. What I'm going to start here is the application side. So again, I can come into the SAM summary screen, and this is going to show me all my applications. And we sort by applications. We're showing you because we know, at least from personal experience, that somebody's going to call in and not say, hey, I think your Exchange mailbox has got some weird queue issue. They're just going to say email. So we're going to sort by, hey, here's your Exchange environment, or hey, the website is down, so let me go over to Apache or SharePoint or something like that. But I can see that there are, basically, we've lumped all of our SQL servers here. And we love SQL Server so much in SAM that we've actually given it its own dashboard right out of the box. You can come here and just hit SQL Server, bam, and now it's going to populate all my SQL servers. We've got the ability to create maps, so I can see how my SQL servers are communicating, some of their dependencies, what the particular databases themselves, and these are all drillable. You can drill into these further. You can get the high overview status in here. So again, if you're wanting to do things in a knock view, anything along those lines, you've got the ability to customize it. But right now I'm going to drill over here, and I've got a couple SQL servers. I'm going to just open up two servers here. Open this in a new tab, and I'm going to open up this one in a new tab. So right now I'm going to end up, because I clicked on the server name, what I'm going to do is end up at the high level from the server point of view. And so right now it's loading. I opened up two in particular because the very first one, it's already going to point out to you that this is a virtual machine and tell you the host that it's already on. So you're going to see some metrics are kind of hidden from here, or not metrics are hidden, but some data is not present here, again, because it's a virtual machine, so some of this is abstracted. But over to this one, you can see that I don't have all that information. This is a physical box. It may be one of the last physical boxes in our lab environment. But if I scroll down here, I was telling earlier that you are pulling out service tag, model number, fan, temp. So again, these are all alertable and configurable metrics. So again, I want to know if memory goes down or if fan's going out or the temps are rising. Because again, if I have fans that are failing, I have, okay, that's going to spike my CPU. My CPU is going to declock. All of a sudden, SQL performance has changed literally because my, 3 gigahertz is now running at 1.5 gigahertz. Anything along those lines. So very foundational troubleshooting at this layer. I can also see connections here. So again, this is telling me basically it's got an agent on the box, and I can drill into any one of these, and it's telling me that this SQL server has got these connections. So again, from a troubleshooting point of view, I can see, SQL server.exe. Obviously, it's chewing up a lot of memory, and it's got this port open, and it's communicating to this server, the DPA01 server. So again, I can come in here and start seeing all my connections. This makes sense if you've got maybe your database server is far away from your front-end server, but hey, if I saw a packet loss and latency and everything else checks out okay, it may not be a database issue, may not even be a server issue. It just may be, hey, you're trying to pull data from New York to Los Angeles and we're getting some packet loss here. This is more of a networking issue than an actual database or operating system issue. Go back real quick. And again, this is going to give me my high overview of all my, what's going on in this box. I can come over here and click my vital stats. And again, this is just going to give me my disks, my RAM. I will readily admit that I have been burned one too many times by having poor partitions and putting logs on a drive that was not big enough and having that particular drive fill up. And all of a sudden the database, the SQL server just cruds out on me. And I'm like, oh, it has nothing to, literally I need to truncate some log. I need to move some logs around. Backup didn't, terminate the logs, whatever it was, that's on me that, I've poorly configured my log location and log retention. But again, I'm seeing more network information on here, packet loss. I'm seeing CPU. I can get some insights into my top talkers, so I can see that this particular server has had the most communication with NOC, APE, OS1V. So again, now I'm seeing how much communication between the servers. Well, not necessarily database specific. I'm now getting some metrics into what is this machine doing, how is it performing, things along those lines. Go back over here and now getting some good stuff. So back to this summary screen. What I'm going to do is quickly, open this up in a new tab. And while that opens, I inadvertently clicked the wrong box. I apologize. Let me open that other server up real quick. You would have thought I didn't practice this demo 500 times today, but only human. So again, back at the main summary screen, if I scroll down, again, I'm looking at all the information, but this is where I'm seeing things from the server point of view. I can, again, see the network stuff. I can see some drives, some CPU memory utilization, but now I can start seeing services and processes on here. Because again, well, I know it's a SQL server because I'm monitoring it. It's also got a backup on here. So again, if you're just troubleshooting this from a database point of view, I could have a hung backup job that's chewing up cycles that I'm unaware of. So again, this is, the foundational view, looking at it from Windows, what is going on, things along those lines. I'm going to click into the SQL server to show some more SQL server stats we get just from the server side before I toss it over to Tom to really dive deep into the actual database side of the house. So right now the box I've been showing you, I've got a Windows template on there. And now I've got this SQL template. So now all this data, most of this data is still looking from a Windows point of view. I can see my connections now. These connections are pre-filtered to only deal with things that the SQL server is talking to. So the other one may have some updates. If I go back to the main server, I may see some updates. I may see some connections to a web server, something along those lines. These are now pre-filtered to only be services and processes that are linked to SQL Server. So again, I can now see all my databases. I can see any type of buffer stats or caching stats. What we've got is this mini stack here. This is basically a red-green dashboard of all my connections or all the things that it's doing. So I've got my actual box here. I got the database instance. I can see what applications are on here, pools, LUNs, all the way to storage. So again, this is great that all these things have to do with the database. If my storage is poorly performing, my database is going to be poor. If I have an application issue, everything may be green, and it may not be a database issue, but the app has got issues. So I just basically have to prove myself innocent, pull up some stats, say, hey, it's not my issue, it's somewhere else. But again, this gives you good indication of where to start troubleshooting. I can dive into these things, start seeing here. Again, I can see now my services, the agents, the services, the VSS, anything along those lines. I can start seeing foundationally what my server is doing. I can drill in a little bit further here by actually getting into some of the queries. Again, this is still from the, and I'm using air quotes here, Windows point of view, that I can start seeing some of my queries, their time. I can actually open them up and see what's going on, what database they're on. So again, I'm getting some insight into, if I've got some crazy numbers here, or I've got it gives me some indication of what's going on the box. I can also click DB Performance. This is where things start connecting between the two servers. Even though I'm in our server product, you'll start seeing that these are stats driven from DPA. So basically, we've taken DPA, connected it to SAM, and now fed them. It's already linked them together. You're starting to get into SQL wait times, things like that. Tom will show more of this. Thomas will show more of this inside of DPA. But again, we are pulling all that in there. I can see, what actual queries are going on. So again, now I'm actually getting more database specific metrics. If you don't have the two products, this data is all obscure. It's not available to you. So again, you're pulling this in here. You're having those conversations of what's going on. One last thing I'd like to show before kicking over is performance analyzer. So again, these are great, but still you're kind of tabbing around between a couple different tabs, all of this. So I've already loaded one up, and I just clicked on what is going on this box. I clicked it from the node point of view, and so I can see CPU, IOPS. I can see some basic stuff in here. I actually, this was the canned stuff, but I can come in here and actually see if I go to the node. I've got all these metrics in here. I've got 7 are plotted, but I can pull in more metrics from here. But I can scroll down, and now I can actually see my, where are you, database instance. So if I quickly just pull this whole thing over, again, these are metrics coming from DPA that we're pulling into SolarWinds. Now I'm starting to layer over my wait times, I can start seeing into the statements. So now I'm starting to see connectivity between, okay, what is my database doing? What is my server doing? I can come in here and go, okay, hey, I want to add more storage in here. Just drag my storage in here. Is my storage causing any issues? So again, that gives you that single pane of glass. I hate to use that term, but it's the best way to describe this, where you're pulling metrics across between all the products to look for cause and effect. The other one I pulled up, this was strictly from the database point of view. So you can see that, well, these stats are good and these metrics are good. Now layering it in with some IOPS and what's going, are there alerts on the server? Am I having, errors on the server? Because if I'm not fixing the error at the operating system or at the application, then obviously I'm going to be behind the 8 ball on actually tuning the database. So with that said, I'm going to kick that over to Tom, make him presenter. So to actually show, as a systems admin, this is what I found on the server side, and I'd be communicating and working with Tom. Okay, hey, I think it's a database issue. Maybe it's not. How would you start troubleshooting from the database side?
All right.
Got you pulled up. You're looking good.
Let me see. Let me just go full screen. And can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Move my mic. All right, so you're looking at the main screen for Database Performance Analyzer. It's actually a separate tool from the main Orion platform, which is what Jared was showing, which is actually, say, this tab and this interface that people are mostly used to. DPA itself is its own separate installation, and as such has its own browser and interface that looks slightly a little bit different. This is the high-level dashboard view. The few things I like to point out here is how we have support for all these different platforms. So if you're running something RDS, not a problem. Something in Azure, not a problem, right? We've got DB2, MySQL, even got Postgres, which is the new one down here. I'm going to focus on the SQL Server. That's my area of expertise. We'll dive into this in just a second. You get some trend views here. You get an idea of what instances have the most amount of weight, or what instance might have an upward wait time trend. Look, the thing is that this is just an aggregate metric. You're going to know your environment better than what we will. So I'm not going to come in here and tell you, hey, this SQL 2014 instance is the one with the biggest bar and you've got to go look at. For all I know, that's a dev server to you and it's really not important. And maybe this one is the production server. And so you really want to focus on that. But we're going to roll things up, and almost everything you see in this tool will be an aggregate. And at some point, there needs to be a brain in the seat that says, oh, wait, this instance is actually more important than the other ones. All right. So that being said, if I just look at the SQL Server ones right here, all things being equal, let's say they're all production ones, this dashboard view is going to let me have an understanding of where I might want to focus first. So these columns, these are the weight columns. There's the tuning column, CPU, memory, disk, and sessions, right? Oops, I logged out. Oh, log back in. So you can see red. Red is probably a bad thing. So we have red, green, and yellow. I'm going to start by going over to, let's do this. If I highlight this and it says critical tuning advisor issue detected, okay. So let's click on it. What this does is with one click, it brings me to what is called the Table Tuning Advisors page. Now, if you've ever had the experience of trying to help somebody tune a query, you've likely focused on, say, the statement itself, you focused on an execution plan or a query plan, and you've tried to make modifications perhaps to an index that you know the statement is using because you can see it's in the plan, or maybe you try to rewrite the code a little bit and try to streamline it that way. However, the question I always ask is this. If you make that change to that index, do you know how many other queries are also using that index? Usually the answer is no. You know, you've got to go find a way to scrub your plan cache, or you've got to find some other way to get the information because the plan cache could have, may not be up to date, right? It could have been restarted. If the instance restarted, you'll lose that information, or plans could be ejected from cache naturally. Here's the thing. Right now, I can come in here and I can say, hey, look, like this line item, 72 queries may benefit from tuning. There are 4 index recommendations. In other words, if you change one index, you might benefit 70 queries. You might harm 70 queries. That's a lot of valuable information to have when you're trying to make decisions as to what I should do next. So you might want to come in here and say, all right, I'm just going to change this index, make this one query faster, and now you have the insight and say, ooh, maybe I might make 70 other queries slow. Or you might come in here and say, you know what, I got 70 queries that could benefit from this one index recommendation. Again, it's going to make you efficient in your role as a database administrator. No other tool I know is taking this data and basically we're doing a pivot. Instead of, a lot of tools will focus on statements or store procedures, and they'll focus on query plans and the metrics associated with each one of these statements. And we're here sitting telling you, no, you've got to think of the workload, right? Not that one query. You've got to think of everything else in the world that exists outside of just that one query. So the Table Tuning Advisor is one way to get that done. We also come down here and we're going to highlight information for you. Remember I said we've got a lot of experience. Look at this. These are what we call table tuning best practices. So if you have a relational database, you probably wanted to find some relations in that database. So imagine that you can come across, and I know this happens every now and then. Imagine you have a table that doesn't have a primary key defined, or you have a foreign key that's not indexed. So at least it was defined, but it's simply not indexed. I'm not saying you have to index every foreign key. What we are saying is you should investigate that. It's a best practice to index a foreign key. You should have a good reason to not index that foreign key. We also notice there are overlapping indexes. So you've got one column or you've got 2 indexes that are using the same columns. They overlap each other. You have a wide index. You're pulling a lot of data through that index. Indexes should probably be a little more narrow and focused. This is a wealth of information right here. If you knew nothing about databases, this by itself is going to communicate an amazing amount of information for you to go and explore and learn more. See, you want to learn more, you click, you can learn more. So this Table Tuning Advisor, just from that dashboard view, just 2 clicks, I'm now here looking at all of these queries. I can get access to their plans. I can see the ones that, oh man, there's a lot of inefficient SQLs on this table. And it might benefit from just a simple index change, maybe including a column. I don't know yet. But the idea being, I'm only a couple of clicks away from a wealth of information to make me more efficient in my role. So I'm going to go back real quick. Actually, I wanted to go to the, home screen. Another thing I wanted to talk about, here's the anomaly detection. So you can see now normally inside of DPA, we always say big bar means bad, right? So here's a day, so we'll say August 18th. This is one of the highest bars. And if I hover over one particular color, it's going to give me an idea of the query, the total amount of wait time for the day. In this case, we're looking at, this instance had 59 hours of wait time in a day. Usually this is where somebody says, how can I have more than 24 hours of wait in a day? And I remind you, it's an aggregate. It's all executions, all statements being run, and it's all being rolled up and summarized. So in this case, we've got 6,600 executions for this particular statement, this select count star from nodes, right? 6,600 executions. It runs about 4.6 seconds. You multiply those together, that's about 8 hours and 39 minutes of total runtime, wait time, right? Is that a problem? Not sure. Maybe, maybe not. But here's the thing. When I look at this, normally we say, here's, this should be a 30-day rolling window, right? Normally I might say, check out the big bars, but now we've added in the anomaly detection. And this anomaly detection lets me know that on August 15th, there really was something wrong here, right? We predicted that you should have had about 10 hours worth of wait, and you had, or 9:55, and you had 10:01. And, this is basically saying this is the signal. There's something more wrong here. Something was really weird. This one, not so much. This one. And again, this might be the smallest bar, but now, wait, there was something a little bit different than expected today. So maybe you want to investigate this day before you would ever want to investigate these days. All right, that's what anomaly detection is going to do. It's going to, and here how we summarize it, we say the difference between actual and predicted wait time. You'll notice if it's negative, we don't alert. We just say, well, there was less than we predicted. We don't give you more noise by saying, oh, this is something else to look into. I don't know, maybe the server was shut off. We only focus on when the wait time is more. Down here, just below, we're going to give you more information. So these were the top queries that we would tell you by day to look at. If I click on a particular day, I'll get a more narrow view of this. But in this case, I'm going to get a summary for the entire window, which is the 15th through the 28th. So these are essentially the top 5 queries that were consuming resources that you may want to go and look at. So if I was to do, say, August 27th, because it's red, I click on it, it'll bring me to the query performance insights for that particular query on that particular day. And I can see when it was running. Here's the intelligent analysis, right? It says it was waiting for memory CPU. That simply means it was running a runnable, not necessarily something bad yet. I can see there's a table tuning advisor. There's no index recommendation, but there's some inefficient steps, and but 3 other queries do have tuning advice. So there's some work to look at there. I get some base statistics, and I can see there's also some blocking here. So this is the root blocker. If I click, if I just highlight, I can see that it was blocking other sessions for 5 minutes and 46 seconds. So that could be a problem, right? Now, this is the way relational databases work, is a little thing called concurrency. So you might be running and using some resources, and somebody else might want to access those resources, and they may have to wait. This is just how databases work, especially under heavy load. Sometimes locks escalate, and you end up blocking somebody else. Readers block writers, and writers can block readers. So that's all part of tuning the engine and figuring out how can you get data to people in a reliable, fast, and accurate manner as possible. There's also some instance resource metrics, so I can get an idea of some base metrics to go with this query as well. And I can come in here, and again, if I click, if I hover, if I do this, there it is, I get the description, an idea of what it is. It's a buffer latch, data page, index is in the middle of an I/O operation. May mean nothing to you, may mean everything to somebody else. It's disk to memory transfer, right? Again, if I have to move between platforms, so for me, I understand page I/O latch exclusive because I'm familiar with SQL Server. Oracle has the same concept of a wait. They just call it something different. I always say, the names change, but the crimes remain the same, right? So I can be looking at a bunch of waits inside of Oracle. I have no idea what those names really mean, but when I click on it, up comes a description that will be familiar, and I'll say, I know what to do for this. All right, let me go back. I also want to show from that main page down here. So resources, so high-level resources, again, for the instance itself. If there's something you don't see here, you most likely just come over here and you can click on it, add it in. If it's being collected, you can move these up and down as necessary. You get the text of the queries that are running as well. And the blocking is here also. So I can come up here and I can see, all right, well, here's that day the root blocker was happening. If I click, do I want to click? I wanted to show this is the wait time, total impact for the day. Wait time is the root blocker. So I get information about what's really happening here. If I drill into a particular day, where's the blocking? Now I can see a little bit more what was running and who was blocking. So here's a couple of queries. They're probably impacting each other. Select count star and another select count star. All right. There's also deadlock information. Let me come back out. I'll just go back a couple of times. Locking and blocking, deadlocking is yet another thing that you might come across. Let's see if there's any here. Oh, there was none. That's why I said none. If deadlocks had happened for this particular instance, then they would be here. I would be able to get to the deadlock graph. I would know who was the victim, so on and so forth. I would get the information necessary for me to then troubleshoot and try to remedy. Remember, deadlocks are not the result of like the database engine just getting tired. Deadlocks are strictly the result of application code coupled with database design and concurrency. And that's it. So if deadlock possibly may happen, the engine will simply choose a victim. Otherwise, they'll never be able to move on. So when the engine chooses a victim, that's when the deadlock event fires, and then we capture the information for you. Up at the top, we had mentioned the tuning before. There's also storage I/O, so we try to give some idea of storage metrics, file workload. We have the current tab. This is down to the second level of detail for active sessions. So if somebody's telling you there's a problem happening now, you can get into this tab and say, all right, I can see what's really happening now. If something was being blocked right now, that would be highlighted for you here as well. You can get an idea of what's running on average in, say, in the last hour or most executed in the past hour. And that is 48 million executions. That's a good chunk. Here's the resources. Now, this particular one, it doesn't seem to be running in the VM. The last thing I'm going to show you is the VM option, but you can come here, you can get your own, you can get the resources here that we're tracking out of the box. If you have a custom metric that you would like to see in here, you can get it added. Signal weight. There is no DMV that tells you what a signal weight is. You have to do some math, but that's what we've built here. This is a metric that I used to track by myself way back in the day, and I got it baked into DPA by simply giving them the code, saying, here's what you run, here's the math you do, and you get an idea of how many total weights are running and waiting for an available CPU. So if you have a whole bunch of statements that are simply, the only thing I'm waiting for is an available CPU, then that's just simply I'm waiting for a signal from the CPU, and that's why we call it a signal wait. And if you have a percentage of your queries of your workload are simply waiting for an available CPU, then that's something you might be able to fix simply by throwing hardware at the problem. Say if you're in a virtualized environment, hey, let's talk about virtualization. So let's say that you're running on VMware, like, I don't know, 70 or 80% of the market is doing, and you might come in here and say, all right, well, what about queries, or what can you do for me where my instance has been virtualized? Well, this is what we do for you. We give you a comprehensive layered view that simply breaks down, say, this is inside the engine, this is the guest layer, this is the host layer, and this is the storage layer. And here's what I tell people. See this? Max total disk latency. There's a red here. I don't care doesn't matter. Physical host. If there's an issue with the physical host in this layer, you don't want to be spending time trying to tune a query. You could spend 8 hours all day trying to tune a query when really the issue is down here. Don't you wish you would have known about that 8 hours ago? The answer is yes. And this, when we built this view, this is what I kept telling the engineers, this is what I would need as a DBA. I need to know the things that are happening outside of my engine. So these are annotations. There's an event that happened. Maybe, my VM got turned on and off. Maybe my VM got failed over to a new host. This is the level of detail I need to know. So when my phone rings and somebody says, I'm having a problem, I want to be able to help them. And if my first reaction is, well, let me look at the statement you're running, you've already lost. Because there's so much going on around that environment. If you're like me, you have spent all that time trying to tune that query, right? And you've gone nowhere. It's nothing. Nothing is working. And then your phone rings, and the voice on the other end says, hey, whatever you did, you fixed the problem. Thanks. And I'd be like, I didn't do anything. And next time you need nothing done, call me. That's just the way it is, because there's so many other layers in the environment. And without that knowledge, you're going to be spending a lot of time on the wrong thing. And with that, I'm going to send it back to Jared. Now, how do I do that? Assign?
Yeah, find my name and hover over it, and you should see a globy. There we go, boom. Yeah, Tom, I was raising my hand, guilty of 90% of what you were just talking about, of seeing things and interpreting things, because I was on the opposite side of this, where I troubleshot, like I said before, the system until I was blue in the face. I mean, people were, it's a DNS issue, it's a VLAN issue, it's this, it's that. I'm like, I cannot throw enough at this. This doesn't make any sense. And finally got DPA, and bada bing, bada boom. We saw a couple queries that were just going crazy. I don't know what he did, but all I know was, a couple days later, they went from 30 some odd hours down to 10 hours of wait or whatever it was. And eventually they're like, the websites are working better than ever. What'd you do? I'm like, it wasn't me. I've been telling you this for weeks. So right tool, that was my key learning in there, was I did not have the right tool because I was only troubleshooting it from the system's point of view. Thank you. Okay, we got another poll question coming up, so it should be in the same location as your last one, so I'll let that sit up for a minute. Yeah, Tom, one of the things you showed, and I really enjoyed the DPA, is that anomaly detection, because again, it really tells you what you should, or at least in my mind, what you should be focused on. Because, as much as we think big bars are bad, if that's the way it runs, if a job kicks off every day at 2, then why would I want to be spinning my wheels at 2 o'clock? Because that is normal, but at 3 o'clock, it's still running. Now I need to do something about it because it should have been done by now.
Yep.
And really, it just does help bridge that gap between DBAs and system admins and all of that. Because again, we are part of the same IT organization. We're trying to get the application up or the website, whatever it is. We're trying to achieve the same goal. And even if it's just, hey, I checked all my metrics, it does not look like anything from my point of view is causing this issue. At least you've contributed something to it, as opposed to just shrugging your shoulders saying, I don't know. We've got a couple links in there. Go in solarwinds.com/SAM, solarwinds.com/DPA. So I'll let those sit up there. We've got a couple questions that came in. One was just how the two are integrated together. Basically inside of the Orion platform. So you do have the option of using that interface if you are exclusively using DPA. Most prefer just to work out of DPA, but you do have that interface. But once you've got that running, you just go into the settings control and basically link, and I think you just basically put in the IP address and ID and password of your Orion instance, your DPA instance, and it starts pulling that data across. Where the magic happens is when you've got other products in there, that they start linking things together. So you're looking at everything from an operating system, service system, hardware system on SQL Server 01, and now it's linked it to that same instance. So that's where the magic happens, and that's all behind the scenes, which is great. Another question came in on, using the cloud. Tom, I figured I'd kick that over to you. So are we able to show the same metrics if we're doing an Azure SQL managed instance, or are there any differences on what we pull back on, certain cloud databases versus, your traditional on-premise that you can, I'm using the word hug, but, have more control over?
Yeah, there are some differences. Who's ever asking the question is probably aware that there are some differences. I don't have the complete list.
Okay.
Whatever is made available, we try to get.
Yeah.
So, back in the day, Azure SQL Database wasn't really exposing a whole lot of information, but they've opened up quite a bit. So we're able to do quite a bit more. It was around SQL 2016 when the platforms kind of became the same code base. So a lot of our collections suddenly would start working. Managed instance is also a little bit of a different animal. I'm actually not familiar with what the differences are. I know that we support managed instance. Isn't that correct, Jared?
Yes, we do. We do.
Yeah, we support it, but again, I don't have the list of what would be different, but it's got to be a minimal amount of difference at this point.
Yeah, I know pretty much across all of our products, even on other, working on virtualization product, we were pulling things from VMware's API and we were getting hammered. You don't show this. I'm like, it's not exposed. Don't come at us 5 minutes after, hey, they redid their API. Okay, we don't have that kind of turnaround time. But ultimately, if it's exposed in the API or however they're exposing their data set, odds are we will grab it and put it into the product. Great. There was a question on data retention. At least on both sides of the house, that is customizable. Obviously, we did say DPA has basically polling every second, can poll every second. So again, you can zoom into your data set really well on there. So we do pride ourselves that you're able to spot potentially some smaller problems. If another product or, you've got another product, doing an average of an average that, hey, if it's pulling every 5 minutes, there's some peaks and valleys in that 5 minutes that may get washed out, where if you're pulling at a smaller interval, you're going to be able to kind of zoom into that time frame and really poke around and see what's going on. I think that was the last question. I'll give it another second or two to see if anybody else has any more questions coming in. If not, I will, one more second. Tom, I do thank you, appreciate you taking time out of your day to show us DPA. I know going to trade shows, customers that have this, this stuff they love it. It's like candy. They can't get enough of it. There are a number of customers that, hey, I just did my few critical servers, first, and now I've deployed it to every server, every database server because of the wealth of information in here.
I like that. I think we should have a landing page, DPA. It's just like candy.
It's just like candy?
Yeah. I'll
have to run that through legal first and see what they come back with, but that sounds pretty clean. I should be able to get you.
We don't need to bother legal with this.
All right. Well, I will give everybody back about 7 minutes. It looks like according to my clock. I do appreciate your joining us today. And you guys and girls have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.